what masculinity can do to improve is that more male leaders learning how to be more receptive. Now, that doesn't mean that your penetrative power goes away. It just means that you learn how to listen more deeply, how to hear more completely, and there isn't a place of, I need to assert my will and strength so I get the pat on my back that I never got from dad.
How does an imbalanced masculine man show up in the world?
Well, masculinity is seen as, for most of society, as only a certain way. And I'd say there is a large amount of imbalance with masculinity, mainly from the place of the power over dynamics that exist within masculine energy. And so to really understand masculine energy, you also have to understand feminine, because we're in male bodies, but inside there's also a feminine essence. There's a penetrative presence about masculinity. Our phallus, our lingam, if you will, rises to create life. So there's a penetrative, moving forward, clarity, conviction, directionality of masculine energy. Feminine energy is there's a receptivity, there's a creative power, there's an intuitive power. So the challenge in most of society is a lot of individuals, including female bodies, leading from the place of only penetrative power, only having power over. So a healthy, integrated male body, female body, it doesn't matter, actually has an integration of both the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, the kind and the cruel, the naughty and the nice, the masculine and the feminine. So if we don't know the polarity within us, and it's actually challenging to lead from a healthy way. So what masculinity can do to improve is that more male leaders learning how to be more receptive. Now, that doesn't mean that your penetrative power goes away. It just means that you learn how to listen more deeply, how to hear more completely, and there isn't a place of, I need to assert my will and strength so I get the pat on my back that I never got from dad. And that's usually where the core basis is, where a lot of the unhealthy masculine issues are on this planet, those power over dynamics.
And you see it all the time. I mean, even in working in corporate, right? You see your boss and you're like, whoa, okay, this is very penetrative, like do this, and I'm in a position of power, and it's feeding so much of their ego rather than who they are. So you're saying, step back and come from a place of clarity and receptivity in order to assert your own inherent power in a healthier way. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And what happens with that is you start to listen to the people around you. So the gift of feminine leadership is, can I attune to the space, to my colleagues, to my coworkers, to the people who are around me, to what are your perspectives? I want to learn from you. How are you observing things around you? Because what that does is support the integration of all that information, the top-down leadership approach. Listen, I come from a maritime military world. Like, I know how to be a drill instructor, how to, lead men in battle, how to show up and be that dictator, authoritative voice. And there's a time and a place for that. It's not that that can't be there. But to have healthy ways where you can listen more deeply to those around you means that there's a receptivity and there's a willingness to receive feedback. I think one of the gifts of a really healthy leader, if we're going to talk leadership and healthy masculine leadership, is a leader who knows how to receive the feedback from those around you. It doesn't mean that every single thing that somebody around you says is truth, but you're deciphering it and you're recognizing, okay, I'm going to assimilate all of this stuff so that I can take a directionality that is aligned to my heart and not just my mind trying to prove itself, not just my ego trying to showcase, look at me and all the things I'm doing on the planet. It's like, no, I'm doing this out of the alignment of my soul and my heart, not my mind and my ego proving my worth.
Yeah. Which you said a lot of the time comes from I needed that validation at a young age, never got it. Therefore, I'm going to show up in the world this way in hopes of one day getting the validation. And many times, ironically, it's fleeting because you never do get it. And there's just a never-ending void of unhappiness that we see in so many men who actually show up in this way of just, I don't feel happy, but I have so I've accumulated so much blank, right? Wealth, homes, right? Quote unquote success, awards, accolades. I mean, I've worked with people, who've done so well, but I see this emptiness because of really lack of relationship to their own manhood, masculinity, and their father. I want to talk about something that I'm doing for my health every single day. I got a little routine, I got a little practice that I've been doing for quite a while. Started about a year ago, and it's been really helpful for my energy. Athletic Greens is something that I'm doing as part of my morning ritual. Now, the thing about it is, look, a lot of us put together the thought that green powder, health food store, gotta taste like grass, gotta taste like dirt. And guess what? Most of it does. Athletic Greens doesn't. It has a tropical taste, very tasty, vanilla and pineapple, think that flavor. So what's it made out of? So with one scoop, you're gonna get 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, helping your body adapt to stress better. It contains less than a gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, no artificial nothing, and it tastes good, right? It supports better sleep quality, recovery, and mental clarity and alertness. Now, Athletic Greens is a small micro habit, but it's got big benefits. Now, the one thing you can do every single day for yourself is begin to add it to your routine. And here at Heal Thyself, we only partner with companies that I believe in. Athletic Greens is one of them. They are focused on sustainability. So for one, they're a climate neutral certified company, and in 2020, they purchased carbon credits that help support projects protecting old growth rainforests. And for every purchase, they're going to donate to organizations that are helping get nutritious foods to kids in need, including No Kid Hungry right here in the United States. And in 2020, Athletic Greens donated over 1.2 million meals to children. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. Now's the time. The sun ain't out as much. And 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/healthyself. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/healthyself to take ownership for your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance, Athletic Greens. So it's 2023, it's really easy to start the new year stressed. We did a lot at the end of the year, traveling for so many of us, being under one roof with a bunch of family members, great, but it can wear us out. And a lot of time we can lack motivation. So it's not the way to start the new year. And if you're feeling like that, we need a little bit of a boost. So if you need a holiday from the holidays that just passed, do yourself a favor, take Magnesium Breakthrough and take it every night before bed. I've been talking about this for more than a year. And this is the magnesium I take. I take 1 sometimes, 2 usually, right before bed. It helps me sleep. I'm telling you right now, mark my words, this is the best magnesium product that I have came across in all of my years. I take it every day so I can really vouch for it. But why? Well, magnesium is essential. When you're stressed, it depletes magnesium levels. It's one of the first things to go. And it's critical to get deep restorative sleep. Now, Magnesium Breakthrough is so special because it's the only organic, buzzword, my favorite one, full spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium in each pill. So most magnesium supplements fail because 1, they're synthetic, and 2, they contain 1 or 2 forms of magnesium. It's not enough. We need all that bioavailability so it's utilized in our system in different ways. When you get all 7, that's when you're getting the magic going on. So it's upgrading because so much of our body utilizes magnesium. It's helping upgrade your sleep, your brain, your stress, your pain, inflammation. And even better, by taking Magnesium Breakthrough, part of your daily routine, you're gonna feel more rested, more recharged, ready to get to the new year, right? Kicking down the door and be like, hey, I'm here, 2023. So for an exclusive offer for you, the Heal Thyself listener, go to magbreakthrough.com/DRG. In addition to the 10% discount you get by using the promo code DRG10, you're gonna unlock a special gift with this purchase for a limited time only. Go to magbreakthrough.com/DRG now to get your gift. You brought back that very important point. How sacred is that bond between son and father?
I mean, absolutely. My relationship with my own dad, one of the stories I share in my book, The Embodied Man, is, at 14 years old, I counseled my father out of his gambling addiction. I was a young 14-year-old just observing my dad losing all his money in his gambling. And, I asked him some questions and helped him. And now, almost 25 years later, I turned 40 in March. he's been gambling free. So that was my relationship where I almost had to step in as sort of a coach and a mentor for my own father, which I had a lot of later on in life judgment and resentment. What it was framing me for was learning how to do that with others. But the question you asked, that relationship is so important, and the young boy, you can look at 7-year cycles of our growth and evolution from 0 to 7 and 7 to 14. That time of 7 to 14 is really the time where a young boy is looking for a healthy role model of what it means to be a man in the world. And if he's not necessarily finding that, then that's where some of the unconscious programming, the limiting beliefs, the challenging, if there's abuse in the family, all of those things get kind of pushed down into the male body. And then as a result, usually goes about through the rest of his life trying to seek out underneath in the unconscious desire, please, Dad, I wanted you to love me because you never really loved me before. I had a different conditioning. Like, I felt a lot of love from my father, but I was never had a father that I would be like, okay, he can get that thing done. Like, my mentality was like, I had to learn how to get things done very early, because if not, he was living out of his car. That was like, I had to learn how to adjust in that way. But what I see with a lot of the men I work with is that when the young boy can almost be reparented, when he can be held, when he can be told that he's loved, that he's adored, that he's loved exactly the way he is, then what happens on a bioelectric magnetic level is that these cells, these parts in the body that have been seeking validation, can actually be met with the compassion, empathy, and appreciation of love that they never received. And now what's the result that happens for an older 40, 50-year-old man is when he goes in and does the work like that, doing the work, getting reparented, holding the younger one inside, there's more spaciousness, because all of the guilt and the resentment and the shame that he may have held towards his father or a parental figure can start to dissolve away. And so there's more spaciousness to show up as love on this planet, as someone who's here to listen deeply, to be with his will and his purpose and his directionality. So what that requires is recognizing, and this is a gift of and I want to take it here, is the emotionality. Our emotions are a gateway for our growth, evolution, and learning. What that means is when I'm triggered or something happens, instead of the attacking of another, I can actually utilize those emotions as a way to reverberate back into my mind, into my memories, into my situations, to realize, oh, I'm only reacting this way because Dad didn't love me when I was 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or 14. So what do I need to do? I need to hold myself, love myself, learn how to say, there was love there. Like, I didn't see it at the time. It didn't show up in the way I wanted it to be, but life doesn't work that way. Like, everyone listening, exactly where you are is exactly where you're meant to be, but all the things you haven't learned to love, honor, and appreciate about the perfection of your childhood and past is only getting in the way of really expressing your true power. So this is what I say to men. You want to be more powerful, do the inner work, get into the vulnerability, get messy, get uncomfortable. Don't just keep showing up, okay, yeah, you want to go to the gym, like it's good to work out, but going to the gym is sometimes the vulnerability of the emotional body inside that maybe hasn't been exercised for 20, 30, 40 years.
And then finally going inward to do that emotional gymming, exactly, which is sometimes even harder than picking up 50-pound dumbbells, right?
It usually is.
And that it almost inevitably is, because I've been there, man, and that work is always there. But something that you said has really stuck out with me is we oftentimes, as men, look back with resentment on the childhood that we may have had or didn't have, right? And what you're saying, very importantly and eloquently, you said, is that it is simply the lack of compassion that we had, that it was just the way it was, and that's okay, because our view of what we wanted in perfection is blocking our very power. That's the irony. It's like accepting the childhood that we had, loving it, compassion for it, opens up our space and frees up that energy for deeper power.
Absolutely. And what that means is every judgment that we hold to either others or to things in the past when we wanted something differently, that judgment is basically saying to the universe or saying to whatever you want to call it, I don't know how to hold that power, so I'm going to give it away to that person that I'm judging. I'm going to give it away to that thing. Now, what that means is to really have a deeper date with power means to own all aspects of our being, but that's owning both the light and the dark. This is shadow work. This is probably the work I do more than anything with all the retreats and groups and one-on-one coaching things I do, is teaching people how to work with their shadows in an effective way. Because the judgment that we place upon ourselves or our dad, thinking that, oh, well, he didn't do this right and he could have made this decision different. It's basically saying to the universe, oh, I haven't learned to honor the perfection that's brought me to this moment, because I still think for some crazy reason that it should have happened another way. It's like there's an absolute impeccable perfection in this world. Now, that doesn't mean, and this is a really big distinction I want to make that was helpful for me, is 15 years ago when I was living in LA, I had my sailboat. I was deep in the world of mindfulness. I was working for a self-development publishing company. I was teaching and speaking from stage. I understood. I was diving into mysteries of the universe. I could quantify and communicate a lot of concepts mentally and cognitively.
Yeah.
But what I was noticing was that inside, the cells in my body were still dictating something else. And this, to me, comes into a deeper field of somatic therapy and more, you could say, the world of Tantra, the world of weaving all of this together, going into the wisdom of the body. So for a lot of people, we can understand concepts, but the cells in the body are still holding on to the pain, the anguish, and the things in the past that we haven't learned to love and appreciate. And this, again, is why you have to dive into the mystery, the feminine mystery of the body, because the mind can't necessarily figure out how to dive into the body. And a lot of people are trying to do it. Emotional intelligence, understanding emotions, there's a big part of the emotional body that's like, I don't give a fuck. I just want to be wild and free and hit pillows and do all the things I need to do. And so people can do that two ways. You can do it in a healthy way where you take responsibility for the emotions, or you can do it in an unhealthy way, have too many drinks on a Friday night, and this I learned so strongly when I was at university. It's funny, I grew up in a small town outside of Boston, and I went to a maritime school with a master's in alcoholism, and I graduated with a PhD. Alcohol was my gateway into not feeling my emotions. I had so much anger towards my mother, towards my father, towards so many things that I hadn't had a chance to feel, and I would just drink it all away. I would get blackout drunk and have so much anger inside of me. But when I've met this field of self-development, when I went this field of feeling deeply, I was able to move all of that anger inside of me and take responsibility for the rage and all the things that I hadn't had a chance to feel, all the things that my young boy, who at the time observed a lot of chaos in life, was almost frozen at times. So the somatic work, when we can go in and not only understand how to be grateful for the things in the past, but also embody the gratitude. And to embody the gratitude means owning the pissed off one inside that might be still angry at the world. The one inside that wants to annihilate another, that wants to destroy another. So rather than projecting the destroyer on someone on the outside and judging them, owning that energy, owning that power that exists within, and then you can land more deeply into the heart. You can land more deeply and have more integrity for how you're showing up as a man, because you're not just understanding concepts, but you're embodying the essence of who you really are.
And I feel that, I really do, because there's a massive difference between concept and experiential. And we feel that too. So we're always attracted to the person who knows the concepts and who can be on stage and be like, did you know this about masculinity? Now let me tell you the 5 things, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, hey, I want more. But then when you sit down at a restaurant with that person, you're like, oh, I don't feel like the energy's there. What happened? I don't understand. He was on stage. And the embodiment is the thing that people feel. And it's a frequency. It's how you're radiating to the world. So I feel that from you, man. So I already know you've done the work. I feel that coming out of you already. But so powerfully you said, and how many times we see this is men who are in pain, who never had the chance to, because they were always in a freeze or flight state as a child, not able to be like, oh, no, I'm so mad, right? They're holding it in, and then what happens, like you said, they go to college as soon as they get out of the house and they get addicted to alcohol or addicted to drugs or any other thing that numbs that emotion. But I don't know if you know, but I've been doing emotional work on people, somatic, and holy moly, as soon as people come out of their heads, their protective places, right, where they want to live, and they just drop down to the body in safety and co-regulation, oh my God, that flower that is you starts peeling. And it's like, oh, here's tears, oh my God, here's anger. And the anger that I see in some men, I mean, like, I've held their fist and had them push down on my hand, and I was like, I have to put all my weight because this guy doesn't seem that big, but the energy that's coming out of him is the most incredible, like red face and rah, and I was like, that's a yell from the 90s. That's a yell from the 80s. That is not a yell from this year, you know? Yeah. But it's also beautiful and sacred. So how do the viewers and listeners, especially the men out there who are listening, or the women listening and who have men in their lives who they love, what can we as men start doing right now to start bettering ourselves and connecting to our emotions?
Great question, and I love that you're doing this work. In my perspective, there can't be more somatic work on the planet. Like, I just celebrated all that's happening. Yeah. What a man can do is learn the sacred pause button. Now, the sacred pause button is that moment when she said something, or your brother said something, or your dad said something, and you feel that initial response of like, ah! It's like that coming to. For a lot of male bodies, not all, the usual, like, you know, kind of animalistic nervous system response is that fight response. Again, not all, but that fight response is healthy. It's like, I want to assert my power, I want to be there. But usually that fight response is masking the pain that's underneath. So what men can do is to recognize, have a deeper awareness when they're at school, when their emotional body is coming up. So if you find yourself saying the words, and I love this, I learned this, you know, when I did my master's in spiritual psychology, like when you find yourself saying, I'm upset because she said this, that this happened here, and you're in that place of like wanting to attack, you pull back and you just notice, you take awareness of your breath. Oh, wow. Okay, there's a pissed off person inside of me that wants to fucking rip things apart right now. You pull yourself out of the situation, because I've 99% of the time at that moment when the emotional body is activated in that way, most of the time there's not a lot of healthy interactions that are about to happen. It's just, you know, it's just not usually the case, because the part inside that's been pissed off usually has nothing to do with the person that you're mad at. They're just representing all of the things that are unowned inside of you, and all the times that you haven't learned to love, honor, and appreciate that upsetness inside of you. You pull yourself away. What I do, and I was just, you know, I do this probably 3 or 4 times a week, because I'm human. I have emotions. It's not like we get to a point where all of a sudden, I am enlightened and I am going to sit and I am not going to feel anymore. Bullshit, we're human. I feel, I'm in this body. I want to feel, I want to be alive. Just, this is a joy of the human experience. But I want to do it in a healthy way. So when I'm upset, I take myself into a room, I put a pillow down in front of me, and I let all of that anger and that rage just vibrate through my body. It usually lasts, 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes 30 seconds. Like, it can be really short. When I first started doing it, it felt like it would be for hours. Like, there was so much inside of me, you know? And then after you've done that, you bring yourself back into that conversation and you're at more of a state of rest and digest in your nervous system. You're no longer in a fight or flight response. Chances are, if you were in a flight response, then you may have wanted to pull yourself away into the bedroom. But the awareness and the accountability to your own nervous system is the way that healthy relationships begin to form. Because this is a place, to really speak into, you mentioned earlier, you have a lot of couples that are listening. Relationships are an ultimate spiritual path. If you're listening to this and you're looking at your beloved male body, female body, who's in front of you, they're representing all of the things that you haven't learned to love, honor, and appreciate about your past and yourself, which might mean sometimes you want to rip their head off because you're like, whoa, I can't even believe that you just did that thing and you're wrong and this is bad. But if you take all that projection off and you have that sacred pause button, then you can realize, whoa, they're just representing my mom or my dad that I'm still pissed off about inside. And it's really quite easy.
Wow, how powerful. It sounds, it's crazy. All you got to do is just go, stop, and go, hold on. Before this starts coming, just stop. And then, I've done those emotional release on pillows, and it's like, there it is, right? Like, so different than going like, I'm going for a walk. No, you need to go for a walk and scream or just not go for a walk, right? Like, you need to release that energy that's coming up. And I've actually came from that place, and it's a new self. You're just like, okay, now I get what's going on. Okay, let me just tell you, this is what I feel. You actually are representing this for me. It's not about you, actually, so I'm sorry that I said that, kind of like, it's just a new self that shows up. But I'll tell you one thing, the challenge is when that fire is coming up and you're on fire and it's coming out of your throat and you want to say that, yeah, like the dragon fire is coming out, you need, that sacred pause has to be like a emergency brake on a Ferrari.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm seeing in my head, so.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to say about the emotions that was a huge learning for me was, coming into this world from the mind and wanting to understand why I'm upset and why this happened and why mom did this and dad did this. Like, that's all fair enough. Like, absolutely, it's good to do that in your work. And there's also a place I find with the emotions that sometimes they just want to be like, I just want to cry and I don't need to have a reason. I don't need to know why. Right. I had a moment, one of the organizations I now teach with around the world, I was in the first time I took their training, I was in New Zealand, and I was having one of these like come to Jesus moments. It was pouring rain, my head was back, I was crying and I didn't know, and at first it was about mom, then it was about dad, then it was about my sister, and then it was about, all these things. And then eventually I noticed my mind coming in, wanting to understand, and I just said to my mind in that moment,
right,
I'll be back. Like, I'm going to come back to you. Just give me a moment. Just let me emote for no reason. And I just let it myself emote and cry and be upset and be angry. And it was so liberating. It was so freeing to not need to know why I was upset, to not need to know why tears were there. I was just being with energy in motion.
Yeah.
Emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was so
emotions.
freeing.
And I totally appreciate that. And this is why I talk so much about the importance and the value of therapy to a certain level. Right? Value of therapy. We could talk for a while, and you could probably bring tears out of me if we had a deep conversation in probably 15 minutes. I'll be like, yeah, I know, that's what happened, right? Versus me, right? And then your head goes, wait, am I crying because in 5th grade? Oh my God, that must be, like, we want to attach all of our identities onto now I understand, now it makes sense, versus just letting the energy be emotion, like you said, the emotion. Let the body do what it does. It's like we don't really have to harp on our knee healing from a cut. It's just going to heal so long as we remove the hand from picking the scab, right? So it would be silly for us to look at the knee and being like, oh my God, yeah, I think I totally need to understand every single step of what's going on, or just let the knee heal. Let the emotions heal without attaching, like you said, all of those stories, right? The why. The body doesn't care about the why. That's what I said. I tell my clients, body doesn't care about the why. It only cares, are you suppressing your emotions or are you expressing? That's it. It doesn't care about your story.
Absolutely.
So I love that you. So I want to go back to this this masculinity, this masculine. A lot of people don't know what someone who's stepping into an unhealthy masculine really looks like. What does someone, aside from just being in a power position and not looking within, is there any other traits of an unhealthy masculine man?
Yeah, it's penetrating without consent. It is, it's kind of the distorted, unhealthy masculine that is having control over others. It's, control and leader, like there's a difference between unhealthy control and healthy leadership. So the distorted masculinity is unable to deeply listen, is unable to, because we can look at masculinity, if we look at like deities, if we look at a lot of traditions that look at different masculine principles. If I look at Shiva, which is kind of the Hindu representation of pure masculine presence, there's a stillness, there's a healthy place of witnessing without judgment. So the unhealthy masculine witnesses with judgment. He's looking outside of the world and saying, oh, they're this way. Why are people doing this? Oh, this is making me uncomfortable. The healthy masculine is able to do two things. He's able to take a step back and observe life around. This is one of the gifts of things like meditation. It's being in observation of the world around. However, what a lot of people do, and I see this a lot in the spiritual world, is they think that healthy masculine is just this stoic place that doesn't feel. So, and this is really a clear distinction. So healthy masculine is that witnessing without judgment, but also to take that embodied masculine into the body can be challenging because, and if I look at masculine and feminine from two sides, from light and dark, meaning that there's a light masculine space holder, more of like the Jesus archetype, the one that's just like, I'm here, give me all your issues, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to love, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to hold the space like a mother. I'm going to be the space holder you've never dreamed of. And just a little thing to people who are attached to space holders, space has been doing a great job of holding itself for a long time. So if you're attached to being the space holder, it's like, whoa, okay, what am I attached to? So that's more light masculine, healthy, unhealthy. Dark masculine, the place of penetration, the place of destruction. Most people think of destruction and, these kind of taking away of life as always being bad. But ultimately, when a man can learn how to vibrate dark masculine energy inside of his body, and he is a powerful embodied destructive force that is removing anywhere there's not love. And when a man can learn how to do that, and he's not being destructive to validate his own ego, and most men listening, I guarantee you know the difference. You know the difference of when you're trying to destroy another because you want to feel good about yourself. That's unhealthy masculine. When you're showing up in your full clarity, connected to your balls, connected to your, full aliveness, then you destroy all of the bullshit, all of the stories, all of the things that people are saying around you because you're destroying it because it's not love. And love isn't just this mushy-gushy pie-in-the-sky dream. Love is balance of both good and bad. It's the light and the dark. But when you can recognize, based upon your own capacity to listen to your intuition, listen to the place from within, and then utilize that listening power with your embodied dark presence, then you just create a field for the feminine to feel safe. And this is 150% one of the gifts of healthy masculine energy. And this is something that you can't even quantify. I could bring right now 100 women into a room, and you could have a lot of men there, and they would just know the men that they feel safe with. The men that they feel safe with, they have a healthy dynamic of embodied presence, not just mental understanding of concepts, but it's a place that they know if things got crazy, that man could step up and say, hey, that's not welcome here. I'm creating a field for the feminine to feel safe. And what that actually means, and this is really the big aspect of the work I do, is the male body who wants to be in healthy, dark masculine energy. He has to know the tender, young, feminine energy inside, the deep vulnerability. If he doesn't have a healthy awareness, communication, conversation with that feminine energy, that probably for a lot of men has been pushed under the rug for most of his life and said, nope, you can't be here. Because for a lot of young boys, it's like, big boys don't cry. You're not allowed to feel.
Right.
Vulnerability isn't welcome here. Show up, be a man, be a man. And so all these things are ingrained in. So most men think that to be a man just means, okay, I'm going to take control, I'm going to lead, I'm going to assert, I'm going to be here. And that's unhealthy. But when a man can do that from a place of his own inner integrity, then it doesn't mean that he gets his balls chopped off and he's just going to become a woman. He's going to know how to destroy anything in front of him that's not love and above. And he's going to show up and say, hey, I'm here creating safety and being in the vibration of love, not just for you on the outside feminine, but for my own feminine inside, because I'm here to hold her first and foremost.
That's so clear and beautifully said, because it can't be more simple than that. This is basically the dynamic right now of the man and woman, masculine, feminine, is to just have them feel safe. It comes back to the safety of the feminine around your embodied energy. What you're saying, embodied, big difference, right? Even you 10, 12 years ago versus now, the embodied energy. And this is how we bring back men to their true power, right? So this comes back to like what you're saying to me. Our true power is the embodiment of our masculine selves. You're saying the man who can hold the masculine and feminine parts of himself, re-meet that every day, be able to feel the light in the darkness, as you'd said. So that's so motivating, because in many ways, men listening, we all know, oh, you know what? I can do a little bit better or a lot better with the way I show up. I'm exactly where I need to be, but I can show up more powerfully. And how much better of a dad you can be. Mm-hmm. How much better of a boyfriend, fiance, right? Community leader, work leader, whatever, industry leader. That's all there for us, so long as we go within ourselves for that, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is really, this book I just had come out recently, The Embodied Man, like chapter 6 of that book, I would never put it on the front title, but chapter 6 is called Awakening the Inner Queen. Because until a man knows the queen inside of him, then he's often only projecting the queen onto the woman on the outside. When he has a healthy relationship between that inner union between masculine and feminine inside, then he actually can be a better partner, a better father, a better man in society. But most men, it's like the groups I run at the end of the retreat, I say to guys, like, if you knew everything I was going to take you through this week, would any of you have come? They're like, no. I'm like, are you so glad you're here? They're like, absolutely. Because there's a big part of men, they're like so terrified of doing this work, but there's a deep part of them inside longing for it. And I want to share an example. Years ago, I was living a lot in Australia, and I was running a weekend. On this weekend, the Saturday was all women, and it was like, it was myself and a female teacher, and we were guiding them into their masculine, their feminine, all that. And on Sunday, it was all men, and these were like super Aussie guys, like literally guys were coming out of the coal mines, coming into this workshop, like, super masculine alpha. I don't feel. I just, this is what am I doing? My woman's making me come here, and it was like stereotypical to the nth degree. And within 15 minutes on that Sunday, when the group was filled with only men, every single man, and I wasn't trying to make this happen, every single man in that group was in tears. And these were these big, strong, like alpha men. But what happened there? There was a part of them that finally felt that they were safe enough, non-judgmental enough, where they could bring all of themselves. There's a saying I say a lot in Tantra of all of you is welcome. So when I open a container, when I work with a group, I say that to people over and over again. All parts, all pieces, all of you is welcome here to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be recognized. So that means that all of these younger, more infantile parts that haven't had a chance to be seen, to have their seat on the table, can actually be held and loved and appreciated. And, I want to speak into a really important piece of why I love men's work. Because what happens in places like this is that the masculine in you and the masculine in me, he is going to trust more the masculine in a male body than the masculine in a female body. Because there's a part of us that knows that that you've been on this journey in your masculinity in your male body more. But what happens is a lot of female bodies are asking their partner, I want to feel you more and show your emotions and be vulnerable and do these things. But then what happens, that one moment when the guy is like, okay, she's been asking me for like 3 months to feel, to show my feelings. And then finally, that young, tender feminine inside who was like, is it safe? Can I be here? She comes out and she expresses something which probably isn't doing in a very clear, emotional, like integrity way. And it can be a little bit messy because in general, she's probably a 12 or 13-year-old little girl. So she comes out. Now, if the masculine energy in that female body doesn't have a healthy way of witnessing without judgment, then if that's not there, then that feminine, that tender young feminine is probably going to be judged, ridiculed, blamed, and shamed. And what's going to happen? She's going to go deeper and darker back into the body and saying, I'm never doing that again. Which is why so many men have these massive blocks on their heart. And they're like, no, I can't feel because I did that one time. And then I got hit, I got slapped, I got pushed down, and I'm never doing that again. Never doing that again. That was unsafe. And I'm going to protect her for the rest of my life.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean, dude. From even firsthand, I know exactly that feeling of being implored by the feminine and saying, hey, look, why, this is in you. I would just, show some more emotion. You can. Open your heart, right? And man, I've been like, okay, here I am. And then it's like, oh shit, there I go. You know what I mean? It's like covering up because it's like you go on stage and you get tomatoes thrown at you, and not purposefully, but that's how it feels. And then you close up. But really important what you said and really resonated. It's in a group of men together, we feel most seen and understood and safe. I mean, I feel like a man in a group of women who are non-judgmental and hold that space very well, and you can be who you want, Mr. whatever, versus a group of men, it's just, there's an energy there, you already feel it. And you're like, okay, who's that guy? Who's that guy? After you allow us to be who we are and open up that space, I can see how people in 10 minutes are going to start crying because they know they see themselves in another, that masculine hurting self that's in pain.
Exactly. And, it blows me away, literally. I run these deep dive 7-day men's journeys, and, the closing circle, the last one I just had in Nicaragua like 2 months ago, the entire group was just in these like tears of power and gratitude. And, sometimes tears are associated to like weakness, but when tears are coming from this deep empowered place of love and just like having such brotherly love of like feeling, so many men are like, wow, I can actually be all of me. I don't need to compartmentalize parts of me. I can bring all of me. And so, I love, after things like that, when, my inbox gets filled with, the messages from wives and girlfriends, they're like, I don't know what you did to him, but something changed. And thank you. Like there's a felt differentiation in that man. And that happens when men come together and they can let go their arms, they can let go their masks, they can just let themselves be seen. And that doesn't mean they get weak. What it means is they have a healthier relationship between their own innate power and their own internal vulnerability. And when power and vulnerability dance inside themselves, an inner union gets formed. An inner union is a place of where purpose and directionality for the life that you're leading gets to be expressed into the world.
That's powerful to think about, the union between both. We spoke about that hyper-masculine, penetrative, my way, this is the way it's going to be. But what about the men who are in the hyper-feminine, in the passivity of everything, like, oh, whatever we do, it's fine. What is happening there? Is it different ways we were parented versus different things we're proving to? Is it a mother wound? What happens to the man who just so disconnected and very, very in their feminine and doesn't even know how to step into any masculinity?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for bringing that in. What I find, there's a lot of different situations, but there tended to be an over-coddling of the mother on that man. And so, or there was some situation where that man came to a really strong state of power and he was judged and ridiculed. So in his brain, the belief is like a lot of penetration and power equals bad. Like some set of values inside the mind is saying basically, if I assert my strength, because a lot of us, I always come back to that, Marianne Williamson quote. Sometimes our greatest fear is not that we're too small. Our greatest fear is that we're too much. And if we've had situations in our lives where somebody has told us that we're too much, then we've learned this, kind of default way of being to just be more kind of complacent and be more like soft and gentle. And and also what I find a lot of men, like I live, when I'm not on the road, I live a lot of times here in Ubud in Bali, and it's a place of healing. It's a place where I see not a lot, but a fair amount of men who kind of come here to dive into their feeling body, into their feminine, into their expression, into their dance. But what happens is sometimes they lose their balls. They lose that place of their will that's like, I'm here, and I'm here to stand for my beliefs, my desires, and why I've come onto this earth. So what I would say to those men that are feeling a little bit more complacent and a little bit more, kind of soft, it's not a bad thing. Like feminine receptivity and creativity and intuition can be beautiful. But, if that feminine doesn't have a healthy backbone, and doesn't have a healthy sword in his back to pull out at any time to say, hey, that's not allowed here, then that feminine leadership isn't as strong. So to me, it's less around it needing to be penetrated and strong or soft and tender. It's a place in between. But what I would say to those beings, if you resonate with what Dr. G was just asking, is like, to get back into finding your will. Now, if you can imagine, if you take your hands right now and put one finger at your belly button, one finger at the bottom of your rib cage, right in between that is your third chakra. That's your will to survive, your will to succeed, that place that stands forth with a penetrative, persistent presence that knows what he's here for. And a lot of will for many male bodies has almost been taken away because the world, mother, father has said like, oh, no, you're too much. That's too much here. You're too creative. You're too this. You're too that. And we start to believe those stories. We start to believe that they're actually true. It's like, no, they're just someone else's interpretation of what they think we need to be. And this is why it's so important to unravel the stories. Chapter 1 in my book, The Embodied Man, is unraveling the stories so that we can get back into the core of who we really are. The stories, the beliefs, the ideas are impacting our reality. So if I'm buying into a belief that I took on at 15 years old, that to be powerful is to be bad because Dad was pissed off at all the powerful people in the town and, said, money is bad or power is bad. Then a lot of us took on that. And we're like, I'm not allowed to be bad because then Dad's going to be mad at me for being too powerful. That's just an example. So it's really looking at what are the conditioning that's brought you into this moment, listening to this conversation, hearing the sound of my voice, and what conditioning can you say, hey, I'm done with you because I know what I'm here for. And I guarantee the people listening right now, you want to be on your deathbed not thinking about all the things you wished you did, but rather having done all the things of why you have incarnated into this body in the first place. And when you can find that key source that vibrates from the center of your heart, from the connection to your soul. And then you need will to be in the world. You need the will to say, hey, I'm going to move through the resistance, because I'm sure you know, you're a business owner and creator. Sometimes there's a thick force field that's there that you need to move through. Sometimes that force field is trying to show you a different direction. And this is also an important lesson, the distinction between, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep pushing through. I was taught perseverance, and I need to be perseverant because that's what I learned. And that other place of like, well, maybe the universe is showing me a different direction, so I can take what I'm learning here and then utilize my intuitive, receptive skills to guide myself in a different direction. So it's really, it's utilizing your deep listening and receptivity in conjunction with the power and the will to succeed, and the power and will to say, I am here, and there's not another human on the planet that is exactly like me with everything I've gone through. And when someone knows that and they bring that into a boardroom, into the bedroom, into life, everything changes.
Powerful, powerful, man. To think, I love the analogy, right? You have the feminine softness, right? The connection to intuition, the flow, but you got a sword on your back, or you got the backbone, right? That's the will, what's holding it up, right? The dynamics between the two to be able to show up. Yes, I can be soft, I could be in that flow, but hold on, I got my sword over here to be like, this is what I'm doing. Here's why I'm here, right? Mm-hmm. Here's why I know I'm here, and here's how I'm going to assert my will for the betterment of people, right? To assert my power for the betterment of the people around me and for society, why I'm here incarnated, as you said. You said something, you said bedroom, and that put another light on my head, because we were talking a little bit off air about shame and body image, and you know, I've never seen this connection or heard this connection. You talked about how the connection or the shame that we carry is going to hold us back from our own success in work and in business. If I'm paraphrasing that in any way wrong, just let me know. But I would love to know, what is the connection? How can we go deeper into that?
For sure. You know, it comes back into what I was sharing earlier on the judgment. So if there are shames and resentments and things, especially around our sexuality, around any aspect of our being, then that's literally cells in the body that can't hold the space of love. Because what shame is, what judgment is on a bioelectric, and I'll speak science for a minute, on a bioelectric magnetic vibrating machine. So if there are things in my past that I have shame for, I'm holding that in my system as a half spin of energy. That half spin of energy is seeking to equilibrate itself, neutralize itself, so that it can show up with more love and power and presence on the planet. This is why people tend to draw the same people, places, and experiences into their life, so that they can feel the shame they haven't felt. And this is especially true around we've been talking about power, haven't really talked about money, but let's talk about sex. Like, there's so much shame built around our sexuality of like, oh, you know, I can't be heard having sex, or I can't be naked around others, or all these other things that's been programmed into us over years. Our sexuality is like our emotions. It's just part of our being. It's like, you know, they have proven studies done that when a child is in the womb, he's playing with himself or herself. You know, there's a natural part of our sexuality. We're having this conversation because sex on legs created life, and life created each one of us. So to let go of all of the conditions that sex is, you know, what do most people learn about sex? From either the church, which says, you know, don't have sex, and when you do, only create life because everything else is sinful, or through pornography, which is like, have sex everywhere. Everyone's ready for sex, and it's just a big sex field. It's like, there's not a lot of healthy places where we learn about sex. So to recognize what are the conditionings that, you know, you as a listener have around your sexuality. What are the beliefs, the ideas? You know, do you celebrate your animal body? Do you celebrate that part of you that just wants to be with many? Do you celebrate that part of you that wants to just be with one? Have you leaned into the edges, your desires, your fears, the places within that you've never expressed? Sexuality can definitely get over abused. And, I teach in this field of where sexuality is on the table. Now, it doesn't mean that all we do is have sex. It's just one portion of it. I teach in a field where sexuality is a conscious conversation. People often like, oh, you teach in Tantra, that means that you have orgies and sex parties all the time. It's like, no, I teach about emotions and mind and heart and all the other things, but we also deal with sexuality and all the conditionings that's brought us here. And so someone who's listening, it's really about unpacking what are the stories, what are the beliefs, what are the ideas that you hold on to around your sexuality, and is there shame associated to that as well? Because that shame is getting in the way of accessing your true power. Sexuality is life force energy. It circulates from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, from the crown of the head to the base of the spine. When I can learn how to circulate and move life force energy in my body, then I can literally utilize sexual energy as a healing modality, which is why sometimes there can be a lot of emotions that arise in the bedroom, because we're opening a gateway where someone can feel everything. That means they can feel the times when they were ashamed and they were afraid to be the wild, crazy sexual being that they are. It's like, let me break free of that, but do it with integrity and tact. Breaking free about that doesn't mean we need to have sex everywhere and just think that it's just a big situation. Just means I'm aligned and I'm connected to my heart. I'm connected to my sexuality as one of the 4 centers in my body that I listen to.
And you're talking about shame. The shame is what I find one of the deepest emotional repressions that I'm seeing on the table, right? Shame, men and women. How do we even access that shame? This is, like you said, religion, right? A lot of us grow up with religion and this belief system that is not only just taught to us at an early age, but perpetuated. And we hear it in the house and we read it in books and then we hear it again at church and then we hear it at the house, right? Or, like you said, perpetuated in pornography and, there's no basis to it and there's the other extreme. But regardless, there's always some level of shame unless it's healthily expressed. How do we even access that shame? How do we even know that we even have shame? How do we even know that we're holding shame? And how do we begin to express or make ourselves uncomfortable to express, okay, I'm ready to express this shame and I'm ready to transcend that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this question, and it's a whole rabbit hole of conversation for sure. I would say to first assess it is someone listening, just take a moment and just place your hand on your genitals. Does that bring up shame? Does it bring up shame just to hold the sacred genitals that you exist in this body? Or did someone or something tell you, oh no, you're not supposed to touch yourself? Of course, like touching yourself in public is not necessarily a proper thing to do, but touching yourself in the comfort of your own home, does that bring up shame? Does it bring up shame for your beloved to see you naked? Do you have sex with the lights on or the lights off? Are you willing to express your innermost fantasies and desires? Or if you were to do that, would you feel like, oh no, then I would be that sexual slut or that whore? I can't be that. I must be the prim. I must be the prim and proper one, Oh, okay, yes. Let me drink my tea and put on my nice suit, and I'm the prim and proper one. But underneath that is just this wild, crazy one that wants to just have more sex than they can imagine. Unfortunately, the conditions that have brought us here is why, we look at the church, and there's a lot of, priests that take advantage of the situation that they're in, because they're taught shame around their sexuality, and we're taught that it's bad to be a sexual being. It's bad to show up in this way, and sexuality is how we have gotten here, and how we have gotten here is also being in a place where somehow it's bad to have sex, and it's like there's so much conditionings around it. So it's unpacking all of that layer by layer by layer, and it first starts with the inside. Another question for the listeners is like, when was the last time you touched yourself without agenda? You just lovingly brought touch to your body, And does that feel shameful? Does that feel bad if you touch yourself? Or can you just say, mwah, oh my God, I love this body. Oh, mwah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much juiciness and aliveness inside of me. Yes. Like, I want to celebrate it all. I want to be here in it all because I'm in the body. It's like I don't need to transcend the body, the human experience. I want to master the human experience. And the mastery of human experience means that I dive into the fear, the shame, the uncomfortability. So what people can do is they can start to track their uncomfortable nature when maybe, someone starts talking about sexuality and you're like, you notice your body contracting. So instead of contracting, can you lean into that and open it and to be a little bit uncomfortable? Like I have, again, like in these men's journeys I run, like we completely put all of the deepest fears and taboos and sexual issues that exist between men on the table. And I have men, I have another one starting in about 1 month here in Bali. And they're like, I'm a little afraid, but I'm willing because I know I'm about to tackle some pretty deep things inside. Because these are issues that have never really had a place to be dealt with because there's so much shame. Even the conversation around homophobia and the thought of, in the way in which even today countries look at, male, interaction. It's like that's not even allowed here. But those countries that have that often have the greatest amount of male sexual abuse happening behind closed doors. That's another whole deep conversation, of looking at, male to male sexual abuse happening with older men and young boys at throughout the world right now. That's not something that most people even open up a box to talk about because there's so much shame around it. And there's a lot of humans, and I'm very grateful because I have a lot of individuals. I don't like broadcast myself in this way, but there's a part of their beings and their souls that know that they can be held in that way based upon the groups and the things and the coaching and whatnot I do, who have gone through some really difficult situations as a young boy or as a young child, and they felt for their whole entire life, I don't know where to go with this. Because often talking therapy, the psychologists themselves, they get uncomfortable when you start talking about sexuality because they're not embodied in themselves. And it's like
they can't hold it.
Exactly. So we're we're looking for a place of someone, please, God, where can somebody hold all of this? And unfortunately, if we look at the last 2 or 3 years, there's a lot of increase in male suicide that's resulted because so many men are like, I don't know how to be here on this planet anymore because no one can hold everything that I'm dealing with, so I'm just going to leave. And it fucking saddens me so much,
The part about homophobia, I'm still trying to understand. So you said countries that push away or resent it are the countries with higher amounts of shameful sex acts?
Well, look at the countries out there who basically are saying, gay relationships are absolutely not welcome in this country. We're only going, and I'm not going to go into specific countries because that's just, it's just going to open up another box. But there are countries that there are laws that say gay relationships, literally you will be killed for. But in those same countries, what happens behind closed doors with male-to-male relationships is so deeply in the shadow that it's like even for it to come out would probably get them killed.
I see what you're saying. And then in those countries, they have things like the pedophilia, as you were mentioning.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
interesting. Shame.
And shame, and also
how
like
shame really does it.
In similar countries around, shame and sexuality, where like I was just having a conversation with a dear friend of mine who grew up in one of these said countries. What she was taught as a young girl was when he's ready, you have sex. That's it. That's all that we're taught to be obedient. You have no say. Your genitals are here for his pleasure. That's literally what was being taught to her as a child. And like that to me is wild. It's crazy. It's like that. Imagine that kind of education. I mean, that's in one extreme. I know for me as growing up in the US, we were taught like, sex is dirty. It creates HIV, it creates AIDS. These are the venereal diseases. Don't do it. Okay, we move on. It's like, what are the
Right.
two things that children actually need a healthy, conversation around? How to move the emotional body in a healthy way, and how to have more healthy
Right.
conversations around sexuality to actually empower humans to know what this flesh suit is all about.
That's true. That's true. And then that even, and we won't have to go into it for conscious parenting, but there you go. That's two things you can do for your child. Right now, all parents, bring that awareness to the emotional body. What are you feeling? Where do you feel it? How do you want to express it? Let's move the energy. Let's yell together. Let's cry together. And also not being afraid to have conversations about sex, opening that conversation about how powerful sex and sexuality can be, and trying to create a space without shame, without villainizing or judging something that is so sacred. Even in the womb, as you said, little children touching themselves, or fetuses touching themselves so early on, something so natural that we find so threatening as a society. It's mind-blowing to me. That's a whole other conversation, which I'm going to have you back on. You know this, right? And we're going to go all the way deep into the sexual part and relationships. All the men, and that's going to be the one for couples, but this one's for the fellas and the women who have fellas in their lives that they love. I don't even know what time it is in Bali. I don't know if it's your morning or night. It looks like it's
morning.
bright in the background.
Morning, yeah.
It's morning. Okay, so let's get you your breakfast ready. Get you going for your day. Hey, how does everyone find you? Everyone who wants to work with you, everyone who wants to listen to your stuff. What do you got out there? How do we find you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first place to start, there's a book I wrote, The Embodied Man. What's crazy about this book is 50% of the sales have actually been female bodies, like wanting to both understand men more as well as understand their own masculine. You can find that on Amazon, The Embodied Man. And the Kindle version actually is coming. I mean, Kindle version is out. The Audible version is coming out shortly. If you go to my website, aaronkleinerman.com, it has all of my events, information, everything there. If that name is difficult, as it probably is, you can find me on IG at The Soul Navigator. And that has the list of all the things I'm doing in the world. And I won't go into them all, but I do a lot. I travel, I teach. Last year I was in 15 countries. I love in-person events because I think the transformation I can witness in 1 week with a group of beings is life-changing for me. And that's what drives my soul and my purpose and my vision in this world.
I love that, man. You are like the modern day Carmen Sandiego, except you ain't running away from the government or anything. You're just going around country to country and helping people, especially men, man. I love all the work. I'll probably catch you in Bali sometime or somewhere in the world, because I'm going to be joining one of these men groups.
Absolutely.
And knowing me, I'll be blowing up in 5 minutes. I'll be crying. I'll be hitting pillows and I'll be screaming. I'll be like, I'm here. The powerful man is here. I'll be on top of the mountain the next day. Man, I can't wait. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning, all the way from Bali. I really appreciate this conversation. Very empowering for me as a man, but I know it's going to really resonate with everyone out there. Thank you so much, my brother.
You're very welcome. Thank you, man. Thank you for doing the work you're doing and showing up as you are. I celebrate you and appreciate you.
I want to talk a little bit about hair loss. A lot of men out there suffering from hair loss. A lot of women out there now suffering from hair loss. You know that 35 million men and 21 million women suffer from some degree of hair loss in the United States. And according to NYU Langone, shout out to them, I did part of my internship in school there, on the average, the scalp has 100,000 hairs. And it cycles through periods of growing, resting, falling out, regenerating, right? And there's 3 phases of hair growth. You got to understand this so you know where you're at and how the hair works. And ultimately, what's going on when we're losing our hair? Anagen, this is the growth phase. 1/2 inch a month, you're going to be growing. It goes up to 30 inches, and then it starts changing its cycle. You're going to get more hair growth in the summer than the winter. You guys probably know that by now. And then there's catagen. It's the one after anagen. This is the transition end of growth. Decreased blood supply to the follicle. About 3% of your hairs currently are here. Telogen, this is 10 to 15% of hairs right now are in this resting period. They're dormant. The follicles are not growing anymore. And then there's exogen. This is the hair that's falling out. So what's causing hair loss the most? Now, let's think a little bit, right? When we think about hair loss, we have to think about what's happening internally, right? Because it's happening at the follicle for the most part, unless it's a chemical reaction, and yeah, it's happening at the follicle, but it's acute. Usually hair loss happens over time, slowly but surely. And there's different reasons, right? There's a mental disorder with mechanically pulling your hair out. There's even an autoimmune disease, alopecia, that attacks the hair follicles, and we see that. But honestly, the most common cause for hair loss is good old, classic stress. Now, you may not want to hear just something so much of an umbrella term, but I'm going to go into the details here. Stress is the reason we lose our hair because it creates a pro-inflammatory state, and that affects the follicle. Cortisol in particular is a hormone that affects the function of the follicle. So when you're stressed, the nervous system dysregulation is creating a pro-inflammatory state. Basically, the thermostat of your house is going up, 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 up. And this is why so many people say stress is the driver of disease. This pro-inflammatory state provides the exact climate for so many issues and diseases to happen in the body. What happens during this state is that there's very specific proteins that are created in response to the stress state, right? And this inflammatory state, these inflammatory proteins actually infiltrate and inflame the whole follicle. So what happens is basically our follicles are on fire and we begin to lose our hair due to stress. So for me, I always think, okay, so why? Why does this happen? I don't think anything in the body ever happens by mistake. So when I think about it, when we're in an inflammatory state and our hair is falling off, we're in an increased stress state, right? Pro-inflammatory state, what happens? We create more surface area for what? The sun, vitamin D to hit our hair, creating a more potent anti-inflammatory action to negate that. Very interesting, very interesting. I mean, look, that's my little theory. Don't write it in stone yet, but that's the way I think about it. So let's get back to this. So if you have hair loss, here are my recommendations to getting your hair back. As we know, the primary driver of hair loss is stress. So first and foremost, you've got to get your nervous system back in balance, right? You have to do the lifestyle things before you even start looking into things for your hair and supplements and all the other stuff. Because if your lifestyle, if the way you connect to yourself, if the way you see yourself is the thing that is sponsoring your hair loss, then you're going to be at a loss. So meditation, of course, we talk about that, how it helps regulate our nervous system. We know that meditation reduces those inflammatory cytokines, those proteins that are literally setting fire to your hair follicles. We know inflammation goes down with meditation. Start meditating if you're losing your hair, trust me. You got to get down to the emotional root. So if you're becoming triggered, stressed, let me say this. What is stress? Stress is simply the reaction of the body to an emotion we're not allowing ourselves to feel. Imagine your partner comes home from work and you go, hey, honey, how are you? I miss you. And they're like, oh, I'm just really stressed from work. Well, why? Because my boss, this, and that. My boss really stressed me out. But what does that mean? It means your boss said or did something that elicited a trigger response in you, but you weren't allowed to show the emotion that you wanted to, so you're experiencing stress. So more importantly, as we understand hair loss, driven by stress and the pro-inflammatory state, we have to understand what our emotions doing. And here comes emotional healing. Been talking about this, I weave it into every show because it's so important. As you do meditation, you have to go into your body and understand what you're feeling. If you're holding in anger and that's what's driving your stressful state, or sadness or grief and you're not allowing yourself to express or cry and that's driving your stressful state, or shame or guilt or fear, whatever emotions you're holding in, you have to start getting in touch with them because you're going to continuously be in a stressful state regardless. Ground yourself. Getting back into a circadian balance, a circadian rhythm is going to be essential, right? That's going to help reduce stress levels. We know that. So cortisol, that hormone that I talked about, that it sets fire to your follicles, well, we need it really high in the mornings. For many people, it's not high in the morning, it's not high in the middle of the night, they ain't got no stress response, and they're just completely depleted. Or for some people, it happens later in the day. You want your cortisol to be shooting up as soon as you wake up, right? Or in the first 20 minutes to an hour. So I'm going to highly recommend, if you're losing your hair, do the meditation, get in your body, get into the emotional stuff, and get yourself back in a healthy sleep-wake cycle. If you're a night owl, get to bed earlier. You want to wake up as close as you can to when the sun's coming up and go to sleep shortly after, a few hours after, the sun goes down. So what this means is waking up, going outside within the first hour, and helping the sun, the light signals, boost out your cortisol from your adrenals as it's supposed to be, so you begin to set yourself up for a healthy sleep-wake cycle. As a bonus, put your feet on the ground. That's really going to help inflammation. Movement and exercise, we know. Healthy diet, we know. All of these things are going to be helpful for stress. I do like the idea of movement and exercise for increasing blood flow, especially to the hair follicle. So when we think about hair loss from stress and inflammation standpoint, we need to think about what agents help curb hair loss. Curcumin. This is a potent constituent in turmeric. It's one of the best anti-inflammatories around. And we know stress inflames the hair follicles. And this agent physiologically will reduce those pro-inflammatory compounds. The COX, the LOX, the NF-kappa beta, the TNF-alpha, all of the things that are causing the proverbial fire in your follicles, curcumin is really helpful at putting that fire out. Now, if you buy curcumin, you want to make sure it has at least 95% curcuminoids. It's standardized to there. People love ashwagandha. That's one of the most powerful adaptogens in the body. Adaptogens help the body adapt to stress. And what ashwagandha does, it helps work on the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamic pituitary axis in your brain where your hormones are being released from. So it's helping your body react to stress better, react to cortisol in particular. So the more that your body gets used to ashwagandha and you're adapting to the stress, the less an insightful event is going to boost up your cortisol so fast. Now, if you buy ashwagandha, here's a standardization you need to go by. It needs to be at least 10% with phenolide glycosides. For healthy hair, you always want an adequate amount of protein, of course. So much of the hair and the follicle is made of protein, so you want to make sure you're getting enough protein, enough amino acids, both essential and non-essential in your body. Collagen, super essential. Vitamin C is going to help really support and stimulate collagen, so you want to make sure you're doing that. Red light therapy is another thing that helps support and stimulate collagen. When it comes to losing your hair, vitamin D is not going to really help it grow back, but an adequate level of vitamin D is going to help your hair be there. It's going to keep it there. So if you want to keep your hair, you got to have good vitamin D. A 2016 study collected information for 55,929 women in the United States, and they found a strong link between total vitamin D intake and hair loss and alopecia. Other important nutrients to be getting in adequately: check your iron if it's low. Check your zinc if it's low. B vitamins essential, particularly B7. Low levels of B7 or biotin can lead to hair loss, right? Biotin is not going to grow your hair back, but you want to make sure you have adequate B vitamins so your hair is not falling out in the first place. Vitamin E in mixed tocopherols, a 2013 study, found that people with alopecia had significantly lower concentrations of vitamin E in their blood than those without the condition. Another study in 2010 for vitamin E in mixed tocopherols also found that tocotrienol supplements improved hair health for people with alopecia. These supplements also help prevent hair loss. So B vitamins are essential, particularly B7. B7, being biotin, is going to be really important for folks who have hair loss. But I want to talk a little bit about a really interesting intervention for hair loss: onion juice. Studies show that the sulfur actually helps promote collagen in the hair follicle and increase blood flow. A 2014 study in the Journal of Dermatology, basically the patients were divided into two groups. The first group was the onion juice treated group, and that was 23 patients, 16 males, 7 females. And the second group was the control one, and that's where they used tap water. And that was 15 patients total, 8 males and 7 females. Now, the two groups were advised to apply the treatment twice daily for 2 months. Regrowth on the terminal coarse hair started after 2 weeks of treatment with crude onion juice. And at 4 weeks, hair regrowth was seen in 17 patients. That's 73.9% of the intervention group. And at 6 weeks, the hair regrowth was observed in 20 patients. That's 86.9% of the group. And was significantly higher amongst males, 93.7%, compared to the females, 71.4%. And in the tap water treated control group, hair regrowth was apparent in only 2 weeks. That's the placebo effect right there. And 8 weeks of treatment, there was no difference. So this was actually good, especially for patchy alopecia. What else? What's another exotic treatment for hair regrowth? Peppermint oil. Actually, there's been animal studies that are showing that peppermint oil may be healthy. In the Journal of Toxicology Research, animals were divided into 4 groups based on different topical applications. Some had saline, some had jojoba oil, some had 3% minoxidil, Rogaine, and the other ones had 3% peppermint oil. So in these 4 groups, experimental groups, we saw different results. And actually the peppermint oil group showed the most prominent hair growth effects, with a significant increase in dermal thickness, follicle number, and follicle depth. Now, this was an animal study. To keep that in mind, take it with a grain of salt. We haven't seen that many, if any, human studies on peppermint oil, but something to keep your eye on. We have seen human studies on rosemary oil, and they actually compared it in a randomized controlled trial to minoxidil. And this was in the Skin Med magazine. And what they wanted to test for was the clinical efficacy of rosemary oil in the treatment of hair loss and compare its effects with minoxidil, 2% Rogaine. So patients in the study were randomly assigned to rosemary oil, 50 people, or 2% minoxidil, Rogaine, 50 people, for a period of 6 months. Now, there was no significant change observed in the mean hair count at the 3-month endpoint, nothing. Neither in the rosemary or the 2% minoxidil. But in contrast, both groups experienced a significant increase in hair count at 6-month endpoint compared to baseline or the 3-month. So very important. What we saw here is that rosemary oil, a lot cheaper too, rosemary oil was just as powerful as Rogaine, minoxidil, at helping hair growth. It's unbelievable to hear because Rogaine is such a cash cow for this pharmaceutical company, but rosemary oil simply is just as effective. So if you want to use peppermint or rosemary oil, first talk to your doctor, but you can use this as an essential oil. You put it in a carrier oil, scrub it in your hair, let it stay for 5 or 10 minutes, and then rinse it out. You can also use it in your shampoo. And while we're on the topic of being in the shower, I would actually recommend to get hair scrubbers, hair brushes, right? What I have is these blue little round plastic hair scrubbers with little spikes. And basically what you do is you scrub fairly hard to get the blood flow going into your hair, onto your scalp. I do it usually after I shampoo, with the shampoo still in there, but I'll scrub my scalp, especially the areas that could be thinning or that male pattern hair loss happens. And I heard a really amazing quote from a friend of mine who actually has his own hair loss company. And what he said is, look, you brush your teeth with a brush. Why do you shampoo your hair just with your fingers? You have to bring more blood flow to the scalp. And what you may notice is when you do this, even if it's dry and you're not in the shower, you're gonna have a lot of dry skin falling out. That's showing that there's very poor blood flow to your hair, to your scalp. The more you do this, you're gonna notice it's less and less dry scalp. If you have a dry scalp, you're predisposing yourself to hair loss. So a few other things, make sure you're getting multi-minerals in your life, whether in the form of Shilajit or electrolyte powder. We love the Element powder here at Heal Thyself. So one of the last ones, it's a little secret over here, cold water, right? Cold water is actually good for hair growth, right? People say no to cold, don't put your hair in the cold, keep it hot, it's gonna shock your system. No, actually cold water is really good for hair growth. Why? Because norepinephrine, the hormone that is released when you're exposed to cold, actually activates the hair follicle metabolism, and sympathetic neurons directly regulate follicular stem cell growth. So part of my routine is after I brush my hair with those scalp brushes, and I clean out all the shampoo, I put the water really cold, and anytime I start with cold water therapy in the shower, I start with my hair and I make sure all the hair follicles are getting the cold stimulus, put it all over my body, and then I end in my hair again too. Listen, if you're losing your hair, I feel you. Try out these recommendations. Really look at your stress levels. Start with the lifestyle stuff first, most importantly, and go into these awesome, amazing naturopathic interventions. Really hope that helped. Thank you for listening to the show, coming every single week, joining, rating, reviewing, subscribing. Remember, we got the best merch in the game. We got the sustainable, the organic stuff. It's beautiful, beautiful designs. It's amazing stuff. Check it out. It's hts.today. Thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting, and I will see you next week.